wherever you're tuning in from. Today, we're going to hear from some female tech leaders in our tech org to learn how they leverage their perspectives and life experiences to excel in an industry that's traditionally male dominated. I'm Tammy Caprio. I'm a lead software engineer at BENlabs TechBuddy. I'd like to thank everyone for joining. Thank you also to Vanessa and Asia for your help organizing, coordinating this, and all that you do day in and day out. I guess to start us off, I'd like to ask my esteemed panelists to introduce themselves. And since you're first on my screen, Lo, I guess we'll start with you.
Sure. Hi, thanks, Tammy. I'm Lo Weiss, and I've been here at Ben for 10 years, and I lead placement and integration as well as community development for Microsoft and Xbox.
Awesome. Thank you,
Hi.
Lo.
Oh, sorry, I just jumped the gun there. Hi, I'm Jess Fit. I'm a director of product at Ben. I've been with the company for almost 2 years now, leading the product teams on some new and important technology products that we will be offering very soon.
Awesome. Crystal?
Hello, everyone. My name is Crystal Carter. I am the Associate Director of Business Innovations for BENlabs, also supporting the TechBuddy side. And I've been at Ben for almost 2 years now. And I also work on the CEO's task force.
Awesome.
And hello, everyone. My name is Jimmy, and I am a Director of Data Science here, working with the applied machine learning team. And I've been at BENlabs now for, I guess, about 1.5 years.
Fantastic. Thank you all for the intros. I'm really excited to have you all here and let's get this conversation started. So I guess to get us into the questions, I'd like to start with learning a little bit more about how everyone got into tech and what do you love most about the industry. Jimmy, do you want to start us off?
Sure thing. I guess if we're going in the way back machine, back in high school, I remember I was given a project where we were told to pick 3 jobs that we were considering for our careers. And you had to look up how much education does it take, how many positions are available, and how well does it pay. So growing up, I had always told people I wanted to be a herpetologist. I wanted to study reptiles and amphibians, and I just loved animals, right? But then as part of that project, I looked it up and found out that herpetologists take a lot of school, there are no jobs available, and they don't pay well at all. And so I decided maybe I would keep having pets. As I have one right here who's on my lap, trying to steal the show. I decided I would have pets as a hobby and maybe consider something else for a career. And so I started getting into more things like computer science and physics and astronomy and that type of thing. So to cut the story shorter, I ended up going to University of Minnesota, getting an undergraduate degree in physics, and then going to Texas A&M University to get my PhD, again in physics, but studying astronomy. And so I was in sort of the sciences field, but then was looking for a change. And a lot of my colleagues had left to become data scientists. And everyone who I talked to universally said that they really enjoyed the job and it was all the fun of grad school, but you get paid much better and the hours are much better. So I pursued a career in data science and then ended up coming here to BENlabs.
Very cool. What do you like most about tech?
I don't know if it's tech specifically, but the thing I really like about data science is that there's constantly new challenges and new puzzles. I'm the kind of person who really likes, like if I'm playing a video game or something, I much prefer a puzzle game over like a first-person shooter. And so to constantly have new challenges and new puzzles to solve, I think is really what keeps my brain engaged.
Very cool. Thank you for that. And Crystal, how about yourself? How did you get into tech?
I was thinking about this when Jimmy was speaking. I actually fell into tech during a gap year between undergrad and going to law school. I decided to take a year off and was working a bunch of odd jobs that I did not love. And I actually ended up interning with this digital marketing agency that was powered by tech. And I was there for about a year and I saw a need that they had, which was specifically with the tool Salesforce. And from there, I became a Salesforce expert and kind of gave them my end of internship pitch like, hey, you need this thing that I have this skill for. And I've actually been working with the tool ever since. And that was maybe in 2011. But the word tech, and the reason I chose that particular company or decided to work with that particular company, because the word tech was around as much as the word AI is today. And I knew that it was going to be something that wasn't going away. And while being a lawyer can be, a rewarding career, it's a one-track field. You can only be a lawyer. You can do other things, but that's really what you're focusing on. And in tech, there were so many other opportunities for me to focus on, whether it was business operations, which I work in now, or other things. So I kind of fell into tech that way.
That's great. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And my favorite thing about tech is the relaxed dress code. I can rock a suit. Okay. I look really nice in a suit, however, but the days that I can, sit in front of my computer in my leggings and a nice warm sweater like today are the good days that I really appreciate.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah, me too with that. Cool. How about you, Lo?
I'd say that I've been fascinated with technology since I really could remember. I mean, I think I always loved gadgets in some way, in some facet. And I was obsessed with the record player. I was obsessed with the TV. And when I was gaming is what really got me the most infatuated. And I remember there being an Atari in the clubhouse at daycare, and I wanted to spend all day on that Atari. And I would have to obviously go home. And my dad was like, why do you want to go to daycare every day? And I'm like, I want to play Atari. So soon after, he came home with a Nintendo, and it kind of, like Princess Peach, kind of changed my life. And ever since then, I have just always had some kind of fascination with gaming and technology. And I would say what I like the most about tech is the innovation and how life-changing technology is and continues to be. I mean, just like what we're doing with AI. I wrote something using ChatGPT the other day, and I was like, my life has changed. So I would say that innovation is what I appreciate and love the most about it.
Love that. Thank you, Lo. And how about yourself, Jess? How did you get into tech, and what do you love most about the field?
So, some of my family might be watching. If they're not, my family is definitely probably surprised that I am in tech because I internalize very much with a 90-year-old grandma. Like my hobbies include quilting, but I also I despise like having to use like remotes and setting up like smart things in my house. And so the fact that I am in tech is like the biggest conundrum. But I love it because I started my career in marketing, specifically customer relationship marketing, CRM. And I love marketing. I love the customer experience. That's like true to who I am. But what I didn't love was not understanding where my data was. I didn't love not knowing, okay, well, what's going to happen like after I send an email and like all of those pieces that connect it to like the product itself. Essentially, I felt constrained to only talk about the customer experience and not affect change and not like have an impact on my customers outside of the world of push notifications and email. And so I started inserting myself. Like I started attending product meetings. I started attending like product brainstorming and product road mapping sessions where I started like, hey, like if we did this, if we made these improvements and this data over here worked over here in this way, we could have some really cool impacts on our customer lifetime value and like all of these like marketing metrics. And at the company where I was doing this, it was almost like product and marketing were like at odds with each other. And I really didn't understand that because I'm just like, well, if you understand the data, you understand like what you can do with it. So I started like making myself versed in these pipelines and all of these things. So eventually, when a spot opened up on the product team, it was a back-end platform team, which the hiring manager actually told me, he's like, Jess, you have absolutely zero qualifications for this role. And I'm like, you're not wrong. I'm like, I know nothing about platform. I know nothing about engineering. I had to literally Google what API stood for. Like, that's how newbie I was. I'm like, what does API stand for? But they took a chance on me because that's what I love about tech. Like what Crystal, Lo, and Jimmy have said is just the opportunities that come with tech. If you can understand it, and you can understand like the vision of like what you're trying to do and ultimately like how it relates back to that customer experience and those needs and those problems and those value that you're trying to add to customers, those problems you're trying to solve, then it's just like tech is like not just like a thing that has to happen, like a tech stack. It's like not this like an unimportant noun, but it becomes like the most important thing, and it can change the course. It can change the momentum of it. And that's ultimately like why I'm a product manager, because it's that beautiful blend of like all non things technical that who I am as a person, but with the ability to actually like make that impact and that change that I was yearning for. And so here I am, and I'm never going back. Tech is Crystal. Like I agree. Like I'm working from my bedroom right now, and that's pretty awesome. And that Jimmy and I can work out together every single day. She's in Minnesota, I'm in Virginia, and yet like we don't miss a beat. Like it's incredible, like what opportunities are available in tech as well.
And most of the people we're working with aren't in Minnesota or Virginia.
Exactly.
Right.
Definitely.
Very cool. Well, thank you all for sharing your journeys with us. I'm curious to know. Like, I want to open this one up to the floor. What challenges have you faced working in an industry that's traditionally male dominated?
I can go first. I've been thinking about this problem or this question ahead of time, but I am a mom. I have 3 young kids. When I started that said job as the product manager on the back end team, I was literally the only female on the floor. Like the entire floor of a building, I was the only female there. And I've never really felt discriminated against because I'm a woman. I feel like I've always had the pleasure of working with really great male counterparts. But the challenges that I face are just the challenges that come with biology. When I was coming back from maternity leave, I obviously made the decision to breastfeed my children. That's a personal decision between a woman and her doctor. But for me, that was the best thing for me and my baby. And it was one of those things where we had a dedicated nursing lounge, but you had to schedule it. And so I had because there was only one for all of the women at the company. And so you had to like meet your schedule or else you didn't have a place to go. And so I'm in the middle of these brainstorming sessions. I'm in the middle of these like riffing sessions. We're planning something out and my timer goes off and I'm like, oh, I've got to go run and pump. And my male counterparts have never like discouraged that. They've never made me feel like I was missing out on something. But at the same time, there is that interruption. And they're going to continue talking and they're going to continue those brainstorming sessions while I'm literally like not in the room. And even though we have new parent leave and men can, take care of their wives and their babies or, children that they've adopted, whatever like your policy provides, there's not that biology aspect of it of like they will never have to stop what they're doing to go and pump. And so there are just some things that you just have to like be okay with. Like I could make the decision to provide my children with formula, but it comes down to like that matter of priority. And what I did to overcome that challenge is I brought that up to the men that I was working with, where I'm like, hey, like I want that seat at the table. I want to be part of that team. Can we work around my pumping schedule so that I don't have to leave? And people have been very accommodating. I found that when you can be vulnerable and it's just like open people's eyes to what you're challenging, like what challenges you're facing, they're really accommodating and trying to find a solution.
Nice.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing.
I can actually piggyback off that because I'm a new mom. My daughter is 17 months. And it is very challenging. And I decided to breastfeed as well. And it was like, I think I'm the type of person, I'm very outgoing. And my mom and my grandmother gave me confidence to always speak up for myself. So a lot of the traditional challenges that women face in a male-dominated industry, I refuse to deal with because I'm going to speak up for myself. But I do. One of the biggest challenges that I am facing and still continue to face is the perception of me as a mom and a worker. No one has ever said anything right about me needing to take my child to a doctor, but it's always in the back of my mind, like do I need to do a little more in order to make up for the fact that I'm a parent, in order to make up for the fact that I have to take off to breastfeed, in order to make up for the fact that, she's sick today, which means she needs more attention than usual. So the threat for me, or the biggest challenge for me is, my own personal perception of other people's perception of me, if that makes sense. But yeah, I would say that's the biggest one for me.
I could jump in next also. I think for me, I don't have that traditional path to tech. I'm not a data scientist. I'm not computer science. I can't code. Mine is all use case based. And people have a really hard time believing that I have credible knowledge in like being tech savvy. So like especially men won't listen to me. Even my own husband for a long time had a hard time when I was like, hey, I've got this. Opposite of you, Jess, where I'm like, let me set up all these home devices. Let me figure all this network out. Let me do this. And it took a really long time for people to realize, oh, she's actually got this. Like she's a girl who knows what she's doing. And recently there's an example of this within my own family where my brother-in-law was really just trying to set up like a game night for our family, and he was using his Steam Deck, but he couldn't connect it to the television. And I'm like, let me help. And he's like, no, I got this. And finally I stepped in, I whipped out a cord with HDMI to USB-C, and I plugged it from one end into the other, and voila, we were playing games. And he was just like so baffled because he's so tech savvy that I, one, had the cord he needed in my backpack, and two, that I had the knowledge of just something so simple as like hooking technology up to the television. And later he was having this chat with his friends, and they were like, Lo's got the clout. Like, we trust Lo. Lo can come and set up anything. She's tech savvy. We believe in her. But it's always that I have to prove myself. I think in this male dominated world of that, I know what I'm doing. I love working with tech. I'm tech savvy. I'm the most tech savvy in my family. Everyone calls me when they have a problem. Have a hard time troubleshooting on a Mac, but PC, Xbox, anything you need there, I got you. So I think for me, it's really fighting for that credibility that I'm not just a girl who doesn't know what she's doing, and that a man can do something better than I can.
Totally.
I'll go last here. Obviously, I have a sort of a different life story, having been born, biologically male, one might say. But I haven't always been openly transgender. And I can remember when I was starting to consider coming out, I was going to grad school down in Texas. And in Texas, you can be fired for being transgender. So that was something that I had to consider as I was trying to decide whether I wanted to come out or not. So I think it kept me sort of from expressing myself for a very long time. But then I started getting messages like there was one speaker who was coming to talk to the astronomy group, and they asked who wanted to go to lunch with the speaker. I said I wanted to go, and I was told that well, she only wants to meet up with women, so obviously that excludes you. And that was, a professor telling me that. So, um, you know, it took me a while to be comfortable with actually putting myself out there and being open about it. And that's essentially the biggest challenge I've had. And I don't know that it's necessarily because it's a male dominated, group of people. But it certainly seems like the men who are often telling me I don't belong more often than the women.
And Jimmy, you and I work so closely together. First of all, You're incredible. And I am so sorry for those challenges you've had to go through. Um, Jimmy and I have had conversations about where we're like, we don't want them to treat us like women. We want them to treat us like they respect us. Like Lo, how Jimmy and I have felt that here, have like that, like trying to like prove ourselves almost, especially, like a product manager working with engineers. I don't know anything about coding, but I have to like provide value where it's just like, we don't want to be treated like women. We want to be treated with respect. And Crystal, I love what you had to say about you earn that respect and you work for that respect. But then you need allies to demand that respect for you and to help have your back. And that's the important role that we as other women can play in the tech organization is looking out for each other. And there's like a diplomatic and a right way of addressing things like that. But man, Jimmy, if I had gone to school with you, oh man, like I've got your back. Oh,
There were many women in the astronomy department who did.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Cool. All right, for our next one, I think Jess, I'll ask you to start us off since you have 3 little ones at home. How do you balance work and life?
So if y'all have ever read the book Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg, I'm a big fan of that book. I think that she is a pioneer in thinking about like women and why you want to work and why you do work and how you balance that. But the part that comes to mind is the chapter where she's like, I have a partner. And I would be remiss if I did not mention my partner. He is incredible. He is like a super dad. In fact, when he lost his job, we asked him, I'm like, Tim, do you want to be the stay-at-home dad? Like, you're actually better at this thing than I am. And he tried it for a couple of weeks and was just like, no, thank you. That was terrible. And so what I learned from that book, that Sheryl Sandberg wrote was, you have to have that division of labor. And sometimes that's going to look like pretty, like gender norms. Like, for example, I do all of the laundry. And that's okay because like my husband and I agreed that I enjoy doing laundry. He doesn't like doing laundry. And so that's where it works. But like a gender norm that he takes over more than me is he does the dishes more. And because I hate doing the dishes. And so we actually joke in our family that we run our family like I run a product team where we set our priorities, we set our backlog, like we make our plan, but it's very much like a conscious decision on which role that person is playing. And that's how we manage it. Where sometimes, Crystal, I'm the one taking my kids to the doctor, or my husband takes them to the dentist. But it's like one of those things where it's like a very proactive conversation that you have to have. And like Sheryl Sandberg advice, she's like, yeah, like I'm in charge of throwing the birthday parties, and that's probably a traditional gender norm, but like we made that decision together. And so that's how I do it.
That's awesome. Thank you, Jess. Crystal, I'm curious to hear your take on this one as well.
Thank you for this question. I'm very intentional about my parenting style. And when I was carrying my daughter Marley, the first thing I did was analyze like what skills do I have that I can bring to the table as it relates to parenting. I worked in operations. I still work in operations. And operations, if you know, it's about automation. It's about streamlining. And that's literally how I balance parenting, by like streamlining every potential process, whether that's getting breakfast, pouring the dry oatmeal in a bowl in the morning and just being ready to, put the hot water on it and put it in the microwave, like really streamlining my process. But to Jess's point, like also leaning on my partner in parenting, Marley's dad. He's also incredible. I tried to get him to be a stay-at-home dad. He was not with it. I think he lasted like a week, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm going back to work." And I was like, "Okay, I understand." But also creating a village around me. I'm a transplant. I was born and raised in Jackson, Mississippi, but I live here in Los Angeles. I have no family here, and Marley's dad is also a transplant from Jamaica. So we are really the only 2 people that we know out here to best care for her. But we had to build that village by, creating new mom friends and, talking to my therapist regularly, like whatever I have to do in order to make sure that I am present for her, but also present at work, because I do love being excellent at work. Yeah, that's basically how I do it. I feel like I'm a Dr. Seuss character sometimes, Tammy. Just balancing a whole bunch of things stacked on top of one another, but it's working, and we're gonna keep making it work. So.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And no, Jimmy, you're a caregiver as well. I'd like to hear your input on this one.
Yeah, so I'm not a parent yet. Hopefully someday that will happen. But I have a brother who has cerebral palsy, and our mom was his caregiver before she passed a few years back. So I took over the responsibility for being his guardian and his conservator. So I have to manage his care and all of that. But the thing that I've found, I think that helps me sort of manage that and balance it, is trying to set up strong boundaries. So one of the challenges, and on both sides. So my brother, he's got some autistic tendencies, and so he doesn't always understand boundaries. And so I have to explicitly tell him, like, okay, here's the rule. Like, you can't call me before 6. Anytime after 6, you can call me. But like, you have to wait until on weekdays. You have to wait until after 6 because then I'm guaranteed to be done with my work, and then I can talk to you. So we talk every day. But he's been really good about waiting until I'm done with work, and then we can have those chats that he wants to have. And then similarly, I set boundaries with work, and I prioritize my brother when I have to. I sit in on weekly therapy sessions with him and his therapist, and I take that hour off of work and I have it blocked off in my calendar and say, don't schedule over this because this is the 1 hour a week that I prioritize my brother, and that's where I'm there for him.
Awesome.
Nice.
How about yourself, Lo?
For me, it's a little bit different because I'm not a parent yet and I'm not a caregiver. So it's a little bit of an anomaly from this group. But I think I have really good mentors and bosses who set a really good example of that work-life balance, because I think when you're single, one of the expectations is that you don't have kids, so you don't have to log off early, you don't have to transition to and from, I'm logged off now, but I'll be back on after dinner, that kind of thing. But I still believe that it's really, really important to have that work-life balance, that you're not, doing a deck at 10 o'clock every night and you're not servicing your client at midnight, that you actually have that separation between, work and life, or church and state, whatever you want to refer to it as. And I think for a long time in the pandemic, you would roll out of bed into work. You would get off work, cook dinner, watch some TV, roll back into bed, and then start that whole cycle over and over again. And the only way I was really able to get that balance back was by coming into the office, because then I could have that separation between my life space and my workspace. And I do feel like I'm maybe not as productive as I was during the pandemic because there was no commute and there was no, getting fully ready for work. But I think giving that to myself and having coming to my office and having that communication directly with my colleagues has been really helpful. I also tend to not take as many week-long vacations or a 2-week vacation throughout the year, and take extra long weekends. And I do a lot of Disneyland trips and go to a lot of concerts. So I really try to add that fun element to my life that is not about work, so that I really get that work-life balance. Also, I don't know how many people know this, but my husband also works at Ben. And so that's difficult because we have we're constantly at work, and he has to remind me all the time, we're watching TV right now. I would really appreciate if you don't start asking me if I did this, this, and that today, if I answered this Slack or this email, did you email me back? So I feel it's even more important that we take that time for ourselves and really step away from the office, even if it is just for a half day Friday, or a half day Friday and a full day Monday like this week. But I think you have to take that time and make those steps to create that work-life balance, because it won't just happen for you.
And just to add on that, Lo, I think one of the ways that you do that is through what you talked about, like establishing that trust in those open communications and like being vulnerable with your team, where ultimately, like, we work with really wonderful people who care about us as people. And life is messy and life gets in the way, and work is messy and work gets in the way, and understanding that it's like a give and a take. But having that ability to like be open and trust your coworkers enough with that will allow you to like create those boundaries. Otherwise, it feels very much like I'm micromanaging you. I'm like checking you. But it's
100%. Yeah. And I think
possible to be mature adults, getting your job done. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just agreeing with you and thinking that there's like so much more benefits to like being in person and having that separation as well that this panel isn't about and could have a whole other panel for. But I think like the mentorship that you're able to give your direct reports, or the conversations that you're able to have in person with like that feeling versus just over a Slack or over an email with like the assumed connotation of what you're talking about. So I feel like it's just really helped me to like be able to have my space at work and have my work from home on Friday, whatever, but really have that separation between work and life, because I don't get that a lot with being married to someone I work with.
Definitely. That definitely sounds like a challenge too. You have to really draw that line to get that separation.
It really is, because our teams cross over a lot, so we actually have to directly interact with each other. And I'm the offender about it. I'm the one who is constantly after hours. Oh, did you do this, or did you do that, or did you hear that, or did you scan that, or did you get this placement for me? It's one of our partnerships, blah, 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 blah. So I have to be the one to be cognizant of separating life and work for my own husband.
Wow.
Sorry, Adam.
I'm curious to hear y'all's take on this. This is something that I struggle with. I'm coming from not a traditional technology background. Do you ever struggle with confidence, and what types of steps have you taken to overcome that?
I could go again. I definitely struggle with confidence. This is hard for me. So like, I think to overcome things like that, I have to just like put myself in that position and like force myself to confront things head on, instead of being like, oh, I really love this opportunity, but I'm just like not confident enough to pull this off and to like speak eloquently with this panel of amazing people. But who cares? Even if I'm not confident, I have to do it. I have to get myself outside of that box and accept the challenge. So here I am, and I'm, facing my struggle with confidence head on.
You're killing it, Lo.
I think
I'm in good company.
Yeah, I think my experience is similar to Lowe's. I think quite often people assume I'm extremely confident. I do tend to come off that way, but I also do struggle with it, and sometimes have to force myself to put myself out there. And like I came into Ben, and I was an individual contributor. Then I was offered a management position within, I think, like 6 months of being here, and I was like it was scary to take that on, and having never been a manager before, but I knew it was the best path forward for me, and so I did take on that opportunity and that risk, and I'm really glad I did, because I'm so much happier managing than trying to be a data scientist, individual contributor. I really like working with people a lot.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Jimmy. Crystal, did you have?
Well, I think I am. Yeah, sorry. I was going to say I'm total opposite. I do not have a shortage of confidence at work or in my personal life. And I credit that to, I mentioned earlier, my mom and my grandmom and the other amazing women and men who helped raise me. But sometimes there are times like when talking, having tough conversations, that I have to build my confidence. And I don't know if you've seen Issa Rae's TV show Insecure. She talks to herself in the mirror a lot. that is totally me. I am my own hype man, so to speak. I will like get in the mirror and tell myself all the things that I may not even believe at the moment, but once I hear them, I am definitely going to go into that meeting, do my superhero pose before, hold my hands a certain way in a very, boss-like manner, and I'm just going to take it forward. And to Lowe's point, the alternative of not doing it is having that moment in your head, like, what if I had taken this step? What if I had done this thing, and not being able to answer that question? One thing my grandmother taught me before she transitioned was that she lived with a lot of regrets, and I promised her that I wouldn't do that. So every moment that I have to conquer, it won't be because I lack the confidence. It'll be because it's impossible. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
I'm so inspired listening to that. Of like, the way that I try and build my confidence is I try to be very empathetic to the thoughts of those around me, where I try to understand the different points of view. For example, if I were to come off and say, "Oh, I'm so sorry about something," and this is coming from a background I used to do theater, where if I were to say, "Hey, I'm so sorry about this," or "Oh, that was really bad," you think about other people's perceptions where they're like, "Why are you apologizing? That actually wasn't bad. Like, should I question that now? Like, am I wrong for the way that I've perceived that?" Um, and so, like, being an owner and being accountable for the way that you treat yourself and present yourself and carry yourself will help like reaffirm like those the perceptions that other people are having. But then I also think that like it goes back to that trust and that vulnerability that you have with your team, where it is okay not to know things, and it is okay to ask questions, and it is okay to seek mentorship. But you have to do that with people that like you have a high level of trust for. And so I think if anything, while your confidence might like being perceived as it like waning a little bit, when you're asking a question or you don't know something, what you're actually doing is you're instilling confidence in somebody else because they trust you, they trust your work ethic. And so just being like authentic to who you are and like owning it and like being accountable. And my mom used to always say, "Crystal, I get so touched hearing about those strong women in your life. Like, and I love that you have a daughter, because oh my gosh, like she has a strong mom mothering her. That's just so amazing." But my mom just always told me like, "Hey, like don't make the rumors true." Where if there's a rumor, like like in high school, like there's a rumor, "Oh, Jess is so annoying," or whatever. Other people, if you never make that rumor true, other people will be like, "Oh, that's not what I know about Jess. Like that's not my experience with Jess." And like the same thing in a workplace. "Oh, Jess doesn't know what she's talking about. Can you believe that?" And it's just like, well, actually, no. Like my experience with Jess is that if she doesn't know, then she's going to do the work. She's going to get the answer. And so just don't make the rumors true, and then you can be confident about everything.
I want to jump in real quick because both Jess and Crystal, when they were talking, sparked a memory in my head, and I don't remember where I first heard this. But one of my sort of guiding lights that I always sort of remind myself, if someone said one time, "Don't be afraid of being wrong, be afraid of being quiet." Um, and that has always really stuck with me and been, how I've tried to sort of live my life. And I was a really shy kid when I was younger, but hearing that message really helped me break out of that shell.
I love
That's
that.
great. Yeah, something I need to keep telling myself too, as someone that grew up a very, very shy kid. And this is a big step outside of my comfort zone. But I just try to challenge myself in different ways, and I think that helps kind of build the confidence, kind of putting yourself out there and doing things that you weren't used to doing. I think that goes a long way.
Yeah.
How do you combat biases in the tech industry? Is this something that you all have run into, and what have you taken to overcome it, Jimmy?
I mean, there's a myriad of biases in the tech industry and in people in general. I think one of the most common ones in tech is the people who, the tendency to try to work with and find other people like you, especially when hiring and things like that. And so I think thankfully nobody looks like me, so I don't really have that problem. but I do try to keep in mind, when I'm talking to candidates or looking for people, like, I'm hiring right now, and I do try to be cognizant of widening my net and trying to reach out beyond, my personal sort of social bubble, and try to cast as wide a net as possible. So that's one of my experiences.
I think, Jimmy, going along that, I think you have to be self-aware, and know what your strengths are as well as what your weaknesses are. Um, because in literature, you have your character foils, and the character foils are what make the stories interesting, and like it creates like that climax, and like it's like why people are engaged. And so you need to find those foils with the people that you work with, not to create conflict, but like for me, a weakness of mine is I really hate analyzing data. I hate it. My eyeballs want to fall out of my brain when I do that. And that's just something that I know about myself, and it's never going to change. And so I look for people who have that strength, or who have, other strengths to offer, because then you create that more rounded picture and that more rounded team. And at BENlabs, what we do, we have something we call those cross-functional teams, where, for example, we have on any given team, we have someone from product, we have someone from data science, we have someone from design, and we have several engineers with various disciplines, including front end, back end, data science, and they're all together. And the reason why is because that we don't do a traditional Scrum method where, hey, I know the answer to this, now go and fill it out. We actually obsess over the problem as a team together. And when you obsess over the problem, then you can find the right solution rather than obsessing over what that solution is, because you're probably going to be wrong if you do it that way. But by obsessing over the problem and having those various backgrounds in the room solving it, you get so many different points of view, and you're able to cover those different areas of gaps. And like, granted, we all have like our area of gap that we're like the owners of, but together you're able to get that full picture.
Totally. Hey, Crystal, Lo, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I do. I want to ask a little more clarity on the question. So biases, against or my own personal biases?
I guess like biases as, being a female in a male dominated field, have you experienced like you bias against yourself?
Mm-hmm. Yes. I don't think anyone that I've encountered has been brave enough to be biased out loud, but there are the assumed biases, right? And I think a big part of combating that is like being brave enough and having enough confidence, right, to say, is this what you're thinking about? Are you showing up for me specifically, like we were talking to a manager? Are you showing up for me like you're showing up for everyone else? And is that enough? And then also being a part of the solution to Jess's point. I never like to, go to someone and say, hey, the building's on fire. I want to say, hey, the building was on fire. I've called the insurance company. I've called the fire department. Everybody's been evacuated. Like, I like to go with solution. That's a big part of why I'm such a rock star in ops. So being a part of the solution, like, I know that these things exist and I can't do anything to change it if I don't assert myself and say, hey, this is how we can solve for your biases or what I'm experiencing, or even if that's not the intention. One of the phrases that my therapist loves to use is intent versus impact. Even if that's not your intention, the impact is that I feel a bias toward me, and this is how I would like for you to show up to help, overcome this. If not, we got to have a different conversation. But for the most part, I like to be a part of the solution, in combating biases, because they're out there. And as you can see, I'm a beautiful Black woman. So there's the Black and the woman part of biases that show up. And I graduated from an HBCU, which is another bias. So I have to, and by showing up and being amazing as I usually do, that helps people to understand, oh, people that come from this background or people that look like this are actually awesome. Because I remember having an awesome experience with Crystal, and I'm going to give this person a chance.
I love that. I think similarly to Crystal, I think a lot of the biases I've had to combat are usually unconscious. And, circling back to what I said earlier, and like people not having like the believability or the credibility that I'm a tech expert and that I can stand in my own space, and that I constantly have to put in the work and prove that I am credible and that I can stand in this space. And sometimes I am more knowledgeable than someone else. I think, especially in my side of the business, which is like falls into marketing, is that there are times when a man is expected to understand Forza better than I do, but because my team needs to be immersed in the capabilities of that game, sometimes I have more information or understand the game more and can steer the conversation in the correct way versus someone who's just temporarily marketing this game and they don't have that tech expert background that I do. So I think it's mostly unconscious, but it is me doing the work and always like standing in my space and proving that I'm that expert.
That's awesome. That's a good call out about unconscious bias. I think that plays a big role for all of us, and myself included. All right, I've got one more question, and then I think we can kick it over to some audience questions if we have any rolling in. But what advice would you give to women entering the tech field, or your former self before you got into tech? What do you wish you would have known?
Can I go first? I'm so excited about this question.
Please.
Do y'all remember the movie Hidden Figures? And the character that Octavia Spencer played, Dorothy Vaughan, how she, like, her team of computers were going to get replaced by literal computers. And she's just like, we are going to learn how to run the computers so we can be the managers. I feel like we are on the cusp of that in technology right now, especially with AI coming into play and ChatGPT and all. Like, I mean, it passed the bar and it passed the medical exam. So I'm like, AI is going to be doing a lot of things. And so I think about my nieces and my daughter. My daughter's ambition is to be an inventor one day, which I think is adorable. But I think about like the skills that you're going to need to work with AI and to work in tech and like getting ahead of those trends rather than getting into a field that will be swept away by them. And so I don't have any other like concrete advice other than like pay attention to what's happening here and see how you can affect that change and be part of it rather than be impacted by it.
For me, I think tech is really such a multifaceted discipline that there are so many different ways to work in tech without being an engineer, without doing computer science, without knowing how to code or being a developer. Like, I think you don't really know what's out there. I didn't know that my job existed. I love my job. I didn't ever plan for it. I went to college for elementary education and I started as a teacher, and it just kind of led into me teaching other people and our production community how to use Microsoft and Xbox products. It just translated, and I never knew that this existed. So I think really spending the time to think about what you love best about technology and working with it and really investigating those opportunities, because if you don't look outside of the box, you may never find the box that you want to go for, the route, the path. So I think, investing and seeing what's out there and not putting yourself in the I have to be this way or I have to be that way to be considered a woman in tech or a person in tech.
I can go next. One of the things I wish I had told myself is actually a quote, I believe, from Phyllis Diller, the comedian. When she was asked how did she get into comedy, she basically said if something was hard, she would just quit. And so when she finally landed on comedy as being the thing that she enjoyed. And I wish I would have taken that advice for myself a lot earlier instead of always trying to like force myself to do what I feel like I should be doing. Sometimes I just need to kind of listen to myself and be like, if this is really hard, maybe it's not for me. And there's something else I could be doing related that I would actually enjoy doing. So maybe I should go do that instead.
Nice. I love that. So it reminds me of a quote I heard from someone said, fail fast and move on. The advice I would give to a young person or young woman entering tech, I would just say, just go for it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. To Jimmy's point, but if it does, it will be the ride of your life, because in the tech industry, it does move fast, and you can grow fast. And the smarter you are, the less likely you are to hit a glass ceiling.
Totally, that's great. Thank you so much. I had another good question come through in the chat. So we talk a lot about the challenges of being a woman in tech. Is there anything about being a woman that you believe is pro within the tech field?
I got
Yes.
one.
Oh, go for it, Jimmy. You go first.
It's all the other women have been extremely supportive, and having found sort of a group I feel like I fit in with has been extremely helpful. So
I was going to say the organization and passion and enthusiasm that we bring to the tech world. Like as before, Ben, I would actually say at BENlabs, I've worked with more women in tech than I ever have at any other company. And I've been doing this for a long time. Like I'm used to being the only woman on a call, the only woman in a meeting. And so trying to figure out like, what's your language? How do I fit in with you? I know nothing about the things that you're interested in. How do we connect? And I think being a woman, especially a leader, we're gifted with the ability to love and have those open hearts. Not that men don't have that. I definitely think that men have those capabilities, but I think that's a virtue that's unique to women, is our ability to care for those around us and bring that empathy, that care into our teams and our project spaces. And we're able to like foster that culture more. So it's not an us versus them, but it's like, hey, like, let's make this a family. Like, let's have fun here. And I feel like that's something unique for me being a woman and like trying to bring that to the teams that I work with. And so that's fun because you get to play. I embody like the mama bear, but it doesn't have to be the mama bear. It's the person who cares about people.
The Care Bear.
I think Jess said everything I wanted to say also. So.
I was going to say, mine kind of piggybacks up what Jess and Jimmy said. It's more so just being there for other women, and being an advocate, and especially when you're in a management position, being able to speak the language that advocates for other people. Because as women, we are givers, and we love to give. It's a joy to give, right? And to be able to do that in your work environment for people who look like you is just a bonus.
Thank you, Crystal. Lo, did you have anything to add?
I feel like everyone just kind of said everything I was feeling and thinking in my head. And I feel like there's no one on my team who doesn't call me Mama Bear. And I just don't think I can say anything more eloquent than what you all said.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. You all are rock stars, and it's been wonderful to moderate this panel with everyone and hear everyone's experiences and inputs on the challenges that you faced and how you worked to overcome it. And I wanted to wish everybody a happy Women's History Month, and thank you all so much for joining us.
Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you for leading, Tammy.
Thank you, Tammy.
My pleasure. It's been my pleasure.
In tech. She's incredible.
Yes.
And
Yes,
for all the people watching, if you're a woman and you're considering a job in tech, do it. We need more women.
BENlabs is hiring. Shameless plug.